Welcome, and we'll start with the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Here goes. So what I want to do with you today is I want to go over the Torah Temimah that we did yesterday, just to clarify it. It was a little bit convoluted, but I trust and hope that in going over it, I was able to sort of clarify and I can explain it to you in a much clearer fashion. And we're going to go through this entire Torah Temimah for today. That's probably going to take up our lesson for today. So we had the point where it says, Hine avicha choleh, behold, your father is ill, right? And remember, we said you don't have this idea of illness before this moment. And there was this drush about Jacob asking for that, not to just die, boom, so, as a surprise. So before, you were either well or you were dead. That was the situation before this happened. So here's Torah. Sorry, I imagine that the text starts to magnify as well for you too. So I apologize. All right. Lo nitpa'er me'ain mochach ze mipazuk ze. It's not so clear that that this is a proof. Remember, they said that. From this, we realize that people were not sick before. And how come? Why does this verse simply saying, well, behold, your father is sick? That's a proof that no one was sick beforehand, that Jacob asked for, forgiveness in that sense, that people shouldn't die immediately, etc., etc. How does this prove it? How does these words prove it, right? If Shalomar, it's possible to say, al pi hanahug b'midot anashim ba'alei midot, on the basis of a practice of people who are of great character, lihizahir levaser besorah ra'ah meforash, that they're careful, they want to be cautious about simply bringing bad news, that you don't want to just tell them bad news. And the way you do it, and when they have to convey bad news to someone else, modi'im beremez, they say it as an allusion. They say it in a sort of suggestive way. Behipuch ha'inyan, by saying the reverse of that situation. Anashim acherim, referring it to other people. In other words, and they give the example, it's so beautiful. So this is a specific thing, right? So I was thinking later on, and I tried to think of the example, but very often it says, it should happen to Sonei Yisrael, that this horrible thing is going to happen to those who hate the Jewish people. And the truth is, they're saying it's going to happen to the Jewish people. That's what this is. This kind of style.
I thought you said it had to be the opposite thing.
It is. That's true. But in this case, the opposite is that it's not the Jewish people.
Oh, but I thought the point. It seems kind of like a double negative. A, the opposite, and B, about other people. So that if you say it's not the Jewish people,
it's true.
Then you may be saying it's
right. You're right, Lauren.
I mean, it's not them, then you're saying, you're talking about us, but you said not, so it is, I see, yeah. Okay, so it is going to, okay, it's just confusing.
No, I think you're right, because in the case that we're looking at, that Torah Temimah is looking at, is that not only is it, the example I gave was that that's going to happen, right? And the only thing that's protecting you is by saying it's going to happen to your enemies. But in the case we're talking about, we're actually going, you're right, it's a double negative. Not only is it not the bad thing that we're talking about, we're not explicit about the bad thing, we're also saying that good thing is going to happen to your enemies. So that in that way, by saying, or not your enemies necessarily. In this case, it's just, it could be your other relatives of yours or something like that. Let's take a look at how Torah Temimah says it explicitly. Kadeshi Avinu, and this is so they will understand, she'etzel zeh ha'ish, that regarding this particular person, hamatzav behefech, it's the opposite situation. Okay, so here we go. So we need the example to clarify this. The Kamo Beresh Psachim. So he gives the example at the beginning of Tractate Psachim, okay, Daled Aleph, page 4a. Sha'al Rabbi Chia LaRav. Rabbi Chia asked Rav, Im Aviv Kayam. He was asking Rav if his father, and I believe this is Rabbi Chia's father, if his own father was alive. Heshivlo, so Rav said to him, She'imo kayemet. He said to him, your mother is living, right? He asked him, is my father alive? And Rav said to him, your mother is living. He didn't say no, he just said, your mother is living. The Hevin Rabbi Chia, and Rabbi Chia understood, She'aviv met, and he understood that his father had passed away. So before I go on, I want to make sure you get the point.
We did this yesterday.
We did, but I didn't feel I did a really good job of going over this with you, and I wanted to make sure there might have been some nuances that I wasn't able to pick up, or to make it as clear as I could. Please.
Yeah, you had asked a question. Yeah, it wasn't clear to me at all yesterday, and it's even a little hazy to me too. But I'm starting to get a sense that you don't want to tell somebody bad news, and then you tell it in a way that they deduce it. I find that very interesting. And am I getting the right?
Yes, that's exactly it. Exactly it. Right. They can deduce it. The hine kan. Okay, so now he's explaining. This is convoluted. I mean, I can't get out of the convolutions. I can just try and explain them clarify them. The hine kan and the hine kan, and behold here, haya hamagid hazeh, the person who was telling Joseph this news, that he came and told Joseph, your father is ill, right? Ephraim ben Yosef was Ephraim, son of Joseph. And he says, Yain Rashi. That's, Rashi tells us that. When we read the Rashi, we saw. Shahaya Ba'al Nimus. And he was, Ephraim would have been an upright person, okay? But Derech Eretz, he would understand manners, and decency, human decency. And he would have these. He'd be this kind of person. He was mannerly, and he was a decent person. Sorry. Okay. The imkain, and if this was so, right, based on what we just said, right? Lo havalei levaser lo Yosef meforash. It wouldn't have been right, right? He would have known it wasn't appropriate for him to tell Joseph meforash explicitly she'aviv choleh, that his father was sick. Ela b'inyan nirmas, but in the way we just explained it, which now raises a question. So why did he tell him that? Right? If he knew better, why did he say to Joseph explicitly, your father is ill? Im hayama gidlo. So for example, if he were to say, she'achiv bari'im, that his brothers were healthy, v'haya mevin she'aviv choleh. So if he said to Joseph, your brothers are healthy, Joseph would have understood. She'aviv choleh. He would have understood. If he said your brothers are healthy, that must mean in other words, he's saying your brothers are healthy as opposed to your father, right? He would have understood. So why did he do this? So this is amazing. This is amazing, really. This is Torah Temimah at his best, I would say. Ach mikevan. But since She'ad Yaakov, since up until Jacob, lo hevei chulsha klal, there was never any signs of weakness before a person died. Lo haya Yosef mevin, Joseph would not have understood mibosora kaza, from this kind of announcement, shehu choleh, that his father was sick. He wouldn't have known because there was no illness beforehand. Ela haya choshev, and what he would have deduced is ki aviv met. He would have deduced that his father was deceased. Acharei she'ad az, because After all, until now, Haita hefech habriut, the opposite of health, hamita, was death. V'lachein haya mukhrach lomar, and that's why Ephraim had to say, meforash, explicitly, shehu choleh, that he was ill. Umimele, and from this we can deduce, it's quite clear, she'ad Yaakov, that until Jacob, lo heve chulsha klal, that there was never a case where someone became weak and then passed away. That there was no situation where someone would become weak, i.e. ill, and pass away.
They were just fine and then bang.
Yes, one or the other. That was it. Now, I don't think I got this across to you yesterday.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a comment on this.
Yes.
It says to me also that someone actually lives until they die.
Right.
Right.
And when you have a community of people who pray together, who have a bond, and they carry you through, even when you're ill, you are actually alive
Lovely.
until you die.
Lovely. That is good. Yes. And of course, your illness is also an opportunity, right? I mean, one can look at all the positive things that can come out of an illness. I mean, this was an answer to Jacob's prayer. Jacob prayed for that. Let's see if Torah Temimah goes into. So this, we didn't finish the Torah Temimah. The Torah Temimah doesn't end. Oh gosh, trying to think. It doesn't end until over here. So we've got all this to go through here, and it doesn't end until there. So let's keep going. Gam yesh lomar betam drashazo, and one can also say in with this sort of explanation of this verse, pimasha katav harashbam. This is really amazing stuff. Okay, he says he has some support, from a different place altogether. That this was the reason why Ephraim said to him, "Your father is sick." That expression just tells you so much, right? So along that particular explanation he's just given, al pimasha katav harashbam, based on what the Rashbam, okay, and Rashbam wrote a commentary. He was Rashi's grandson, okay, also a great scholar. Rashi wrote an explanation of almost the entire Talmud, but if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in Baba Batra, his explanation comes to an end, and the Rashbam picked it up from that point on, right, for the rest of that tractate. But the Rashbam also has a relatively brief commentary on the Torah, and his commentary is based on trying to explain it as pshat, straightforward meaning. But Perek Toldot, or Parshat Toldot, in the Parsha of Toldot, Toldot is the one that deals with Isaac, right, and Rebecca. But Pasuk regarding the verse Vehine Tomim Bevitna, and it uses the word Vehine, and behold, twins in her womb. So he explains it in that particular parsha. He hasn't given you the explanation yet. He's just giving you the reference. Over parsha vaY'chi, and also in the parsha vaY'chi, that's the one where Jacob is on his way to Lavan. The pasuk in the verse regarding the verse, and again, look at this: Vehine hileha, and behold, here was Leah. So this is how the Rashbam operates, right? The al kol davar chidush, that regarding any new situation, right? Something that normally doesn't happen, and here it happened. Shelo haya ad, that had not happened up until this point. Ad ko, that had not happened up to this point. Ragil hakatuv, the scripture has a custom, lomar, to use the word hine. In other words, it introduces something that is brand new with the word hine. Ye'uyan sham. So if I understand the Rashbam correctly, the fact that it says hine tomim, right, that having twins may have not happened up until that point. At least, yes, right? And likewise, the fact that this was Leah. I mean, who substitutes another woman for the woman he was expecting, that Jacob was expecting? V'anachnu he'erachnu bichlal zeh, and back there in those particular places, we went into detail regarding this particular principle, la'el above, beperech lech, in parshat lech, in the parsha of Lech Lecha about Abraham, right? But pasuk regarding the verse Hine, here's this word Hine, na yadati ki esha yafat mar'ehat. Behold, I know that you are a beautiful woman. And just to give you some background regarding that, this is the story before they go down to Egypt, and Abraham says to Sarah these words, right? And there is a drush that says that what happened is they were crossing a river. You may remember this. We may have actually done this Rashi, that they were crossing a river. He saw Sarah's reflection in the water, and then that was the first time he took a direct look at her face, or that he saw her face directly. And that's why he said, I know you're a beautiful woman. That to that point, he had never actually looked at her square in the face out of modesty. That's the degree of modesty that they engaged in. Yuyan Sham, check it out. V'kan amar hine avicha choleh. And here he said, hine, there's this word, right? Avicha choleh, your father is sick. Mevu'ar shehaya inyan davar chadash. And from this we can deduce, it never happened before, that someone got sick. The Ein Od, and look again, you can check more. Hashayach la'agada zo betosafot Baba Batra, Tet Zayin Bet, and he says you can check more that refers to this particular agada, this little piece of agada, that it was Ephraim and that people didn't get sick up until that point, etc., etc. You can check in Tosafot Baba Batra, page 16b. I mean, for one, I have to tell you, being able to cross-reference like this before the age of computers and stuff like that, it blows my mind. Keep going. Uvetam.
I'm sorry, but do you really think that there was no illness? That, I mean, I just find this
Judith, it doesn't.
yeah.
Okay, so let me cut in only because we're running out of time.
Sure.
Okay, and this is a basic principle. I am not arguing with you. What I am saying is that if we want to understand this, we need to understand this as a literary piece. Okay, and it's true, we do have to somehow engage whether or not this happened or it didn't happen, but it's literature, and there are very often it'll say things in subtle ways, and to take them literary, to commit the sin of being overly literal is and not literary, is to misunderstand the Bible. So whether or not it was fact, whether it wasn't, there's a point being made here. And look at the discussion already. Look at what Lisa was deducing from this conversation as to the nature of illness. And so in trying to teach us some profound principles of life, it may say it in ways that may stretch our credulity if we take them overly literally. So it's more all the thoughts that go along with this, all right, that it's simply trying to make a point about illness. And so it's not a question of whether it actually happened or it didn't actually happen. I mean, we could say that about historical novels. So and while the novel is a relatively modern invention, I feel the Torah is literature. That's how I look at it. Are you comfortable with my response?
Actually, yes. So thank you.
Good. Okay. I mean, that's going to be my approach all the way down. Uvatam hadavar shebikesh Yaakov. Okay, now we're going to get into the issue. Shebikesh Yaakov, that Jacob requested, he was supplicating God, shetihiyeh chulsha, that with regard that people. So Jacob was saying to God, God, please let people get ill. Let them become weak prior to their death. Piresh Rashi Khan. Rashi explains here, Kadesh Yitzaveh Levetor, so that he could command his household. V'chein meforash b'midrash Rabbah, and this is also explained in the Midrash Rabbah. Aval b'Sanhedrin, but in Sanhedrin, Tractate Sanhedrin Kuf Vav Bet 1072, page 2. Piresh, Rashi explains, so that there would be an opportunity for everyone, mibanav, of his sons, lavo bimkomo, to come from his place, liot etzlo b'sha'at mitah, to be with him at his time of death. And when I read this, I was thinking to myself, wow, that is still the truth, right? People, families live all over the place, and when they hear that a close relative is dying, like a father or, God forbid, other mother or other relative that they're close to, if they're told the person is sick, very often, of course, they'll make arrangements to try and be there with them, to come close. So that's why Jacob was asking for some warning regarding a person dying. Ulecha ora, and it seems on the surface, tzarich iyun, that we need to look carefully, Pirush Rashi or Pirush Rashi lefanenu, that the Rashi's explanations that are before us. Kedei sheyitzaveh, so in order that he should command. Dahas, what do you mean Kadeshi Yitzaveh? So that he could command. Daha inyan tzvaot. He says, because the whole subject of verbal wills, remember, that's a tzva'ah basically is a person's last will and testament, right? Matzinu od kodem Yaakov. We found that out before Jacob. The idea of verbal wills is not something new with Jacob. We find examples of it prior to Jacob. So in other words, you're saying, well, Jacob asked for this so that he could do this? There's some contradiction there. Kamuvu Arba Sanhedrin, as is explained in Sanhedrin, Tzadik Aleph Aleph, page 91a. But Abraham, regarding Abraham, Umuvu Arba Agadot, and it's clarified in Agadot, in these Agadata, in these midrashic or story kind of stuff. The shit that not only Abraham, but even before him, Seth, right? Cain's brother, Adam and Eve's third son, Tziva et Banav, that he also, he commanded his children regarding, what to do after he passed on. Ubepsachim Kuf Yud Gimel Beit, and in the Tractate Psachim, page 113b, Ita, it states, Chamisha Dvarim, there were 5 things, Tziva Kna'an et Banav, that Canaan, right, the, I think, grandson of Noah, commanded his sons, the Gam Kasher. And there's an additional difficulty, the Hatzva'ah, that with regard to a tzva'ah, that last will and testament kind of thing, or verbal will, if shar la'asot odenu b'chayim, you can give somebody a will while you're healthy. You don't have to be, you can do it anytime prior to your dying. Uveshleimut briot, and being healthy. You don't have to start getting sick to feel a need to let to declare your verbal will to your family. And so for this reason it appears, the Kavanat Rashi, Khan, that Rashi's intention here, Uve Sanhedrin, and also in Sanhedrin, Achati, that even though they seem like 2 different explanations, they are the same point. He's making the same point. The Ha'inyanhu, and the point is, Mishum de Kafi HaNir'eh, that in looking as to what appears, mipashtut haktuvim, that from understanding the verses on a simple level, on a straightforward level, Ratzah Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our forefather, our patriarch, wanted lohochiach et banav, to berate his children. He wanted to give them musar. Lisa, I thought you'd enjoy that. V'chein meforash b'midrash Rabbah, and the Midrash Rabbah actually states that Jacob wanted to gather his children before he died, and he didn't know when he was going to die if he never got sick, right? Right before that. And again, I mean, look at all the places that Torah Temimah is going to put this together, right? It's clear through in the Sifrei. It's a Nagade, a halachic midrash on the books of Numbers and Deuteronomy. Rosh Perik Dvarim, Parshat Dvarim, at the beginning of the Parsha of Dvarim, of Deuteronomy, she'ein mochichim ela samuch lamita, that you don't berate except when you're close to death, when you're going to pass on. And the point about it is it's said there in Deuteronomy, because Deuteronomy is a book of Moses's great berating and musar to the Jewish people prior to his death. And the question is discussed there as to why, and I'm not going to go into that now. But the point is, you don't do it until you're about to pass on. V'lachein ratzah ladat et ito, and that's why he wanted to know when his time was going to come. Umasha katav Rashi kan kadeshi yitzaveh, and when Rashi says here, in order for him to command, hainu tzva'at divrei musar, we're referring to these words of correction, right? An ethical will. That's what we're talking about. Ukamosha katuv sof haparsha, and as he wrote at the end of the parsha, vaYichal Yaakov. Oh, sorry, he's saying, not this isn't Rashi. This is the parsha itself. In the Torah itself, it says vaYichal Yaakov litzavot et banav, and Jacob ceased to command his children. Uka'e ala parsha hakodemet, and that refers to the previous chapter, the Eirei Midvarim Musarim, because you can see that previous chapter has to do with words of correction. Harei degam dvarim musarim nikru tzva'ah. So we realize that even though tzva'ah usually refers to simply one's last will and testament, which has to do with the settlement of property, it also can refer to dvarim musarim, words of correction. You can see we did not get to the end of this, but I think I want to get into this tomorrow, God willing, to finish this up. You'll see. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. So, all right, I'm going to stop the share. Okay. All right. Any comments or questions before we have to quit? Golda, you sent me a chat. Do you want?
I sent when you were talking about the Deuteronomy stuff, and before that, I said much giggling over here.
Yeah,
because it caught me funny. I thought it was, because Deuteronomy, what'd you call it again?
The Great Correction. Moses'
great correction.
Yeah, it's like ethical will. It's like Moses' ethical will. Yeah. Yes. Right. Because the word devarim often is understood to connote harsh words.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. That makes some sense.
I was thinking actually that, you might just think somebody wants to put their house in order, put their affairs in order if they know they're going to die soon.
Right.
And it's easy to say, oh, you can always do that when you're well, but you don't.
Right.
I suppose some people make a will and close up all their affairs and get everything in order so there won't be a big mess when they die. But
of course,
people really do without a warning.
I'm doing it.
And I did in my 30s.
You do it, and then you do it again, and then you redo it because things have changed. And don't forget to put all your cars in TOD also.
Yeah.
Serious, my dad's car was not, it was a big old mess.
Cars and houses and TOD. Yep. Everything else in some kind of will or trust. And
I hate trusts.
Well, plus I'm making
I love my trust.
Plans to get to Savannah.
Let me stop. I'm going to stop the recording.
On death.
So
okay.
until tomorrow, let me stop the recording.